clause just gives us extra information. It can be left out of a sentence, and the sentence still has the same meaning. When which is used in this type of clause, we put commas around it. The hat, comma, which is on the bed, comma, is new. Here, the clause, which is on the bed, just gives us additional information. We can take it out and the sentence still makes sense. There is only one hat. It's the hat on the bed. We take out the which clause and the important information is still there. The hat is new. Okay, now let's look at that. We use that for clauses that are a crucial part of the sentence. They are actually part of the definition of the subject. The hat that is on the bed is new. Notice that clauses do not use commas because they are a crucial part of the sentence. There are a number of hats this sentence could be referring to, but the sentence is specifically talking about the hat on the bed, so we use that. The that clause cannot be taken out of this sentence, the hat is new. It doesn't make sense here because it doesn't tell us which hat is being discussed. It would take some practice to get used to who, which and that. To sum up, we use that to define the subject. We use which in a clause with commas to add extra information. You will notice which often being used in place of that, especially in spoken language. While not strictly correct, it is very common. The word who is a bit simpler. It's only used when the subject is a person and can be used in both of these types of clauses. Okay, now we're going to do some pronunciation practice. Students learning English often complain that native speakers speak too fast. Well, it's true. English speakers do run their words together, so it's often very difficult to hear when one word ends and another begins. To make your spoken English sound natural, it's important for you to do this too. You need to learn to link words ending in a final consonant sound to words with an initial vowel sound. Let's look at some words linked with of.
People have always been fascinated with death. Most of the mysteries that you see on television, the films that you see, involve murder of one kind or another. Crocodiles are one of the last remaining dinosaurs, and the idea of a crocodile coming out of the water and grabbing somebody is absolutely riveting.
I read about the death of the German tourist who was taken by a crocodile. It didn't put me off coming to the Northern Territory. It's quite the opposite.
He uses the phrases most of, one of, out of, death of. But in sentences, these phrases will usually become linked together. Most of, most of. One of, one of. Out of, out of. Death of, death of. Notice that of in these phrases is unstressed. Practice these ones. Many of, many of. Most of, most of. One of, one of. Several of, several of. Listen to the differences when I read these sentences in a natural, conversational way. One of my best friends lives here. One of my best friends lives here. Many of the trees have died. Many of the trees have died. I enjoy most of her songs. I enjoy most of her songs.
People have always been fascinated with death. Crocodiles are one of the last remaining dinosaurs, and the idea of a crocodile coming out of the water and grabbing somebody is absolutely riveting.
He says people have always been fascinated with death. People have always. Notice how in conversation we link the final consonant sound v with the initial vowel sound or. Have always. Crocodiles are. Crocodiles are. Is absolutely. Is absolutely. Okay, now let's try these sentences. She is always studying hard. She is always studying hard. They aren't scared by crocodiles. They aren't scared by crocodiles. So make sure you practice words in phrases and sentences. That way you'll get used to linking your words and your spoken English will sound more natural. And don't forget to listen to native speakers as much as you can and try to copy them, even if they do speak fast. And that's all for today. I'll see you next time on Study English. Bye-bye. Hello, I'm Margot Politis. Welcome to Study English, IELTS Preparation. Today we're going to talk about acronyms, abbreviations and names, and then we'll do a bit of vocabulary building as well. The boy in today's episode is about to have a test to see whether he has attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, or ADHD. While you're watching, listen for some other abbreviations.
How do you know if your child does have ADHD? An EEG brain scan helps answer that, say the Swinburne researchers. Jacques Duff is a psychologist and one of Richard's PhD students. A computer program will compare Xavier's brain scan with a database of scans of ADHD sufferers. If he does have the condition, the ADHD diagnosis will be automatically triggered.
Xavier was having a test to see if he has ADHD. ADHD is an abbreviation. An abbreviation is the short form of a phrase or a word. We often abbreviate phrases using the first letter of each word. Notice that you use capital letters for these types of abbreviations. ADHD stands for Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder. ADHD is much quicker and easier to say and to write. You might recognise some of these common abbreviations. UFO stands for Unidentified Flying Object. ASAP means as soon as possible. Other common abbreviations are PC for personal computer, TV for television, and CD-ROM. That's a compact disc with a read-only memory. Notice that each letter in the abbreviation is pronounced separately, but the last letter is pronounced more strongly because it carries the primary stress. So we say USA, ASAP, ABC, and TV. Listen for another abbreviation here.
Jacques Duff is a psychologist and one of Richard's PhD students.
Jacques Duff is one of Richard's PhD students. PhD stands for Doctor of Philosophy. Another abbreviation you'll recognise is IELTS. IELTS stands for International English Language Testing System. This form of abbreviation is called an acronym. With an acronym, we don't pronounce the individual letters, we pronounce it as a word. So we say IELTS, not IELTS. Some other examples of acronyms are AIDS, that's Acquired Immune Deficiency Syndrome, and RAM, Random Access Memory. Another example is ASEAN. That stands for the Association of Southeast Asian Nations. There's one more common shortening in today's story. Listen for whether it's an abbreviation or an acronym.
An EEG brain scan helps answer that, say the Swinburne researchers.
He says an EEG. That's an abbreviation. We don't pronounce it EEG, we say EEG. EEG stands for electroencephalograph. That's a type of brain scan, but you can see why we shorten it to EEG. Notice that in formal academic writing, it's necessary to write out an abbreviation in full the first time you use it. So, if you wanted to write about an EEG, you'd write it out in full the first time and place the abbreviation in brackets, like this. An electroencephalograph, bracket, EEG, bracket, can help treat patients. After that in your paper, you can just use the abbreviation on its own. Okay, so let's listen to the clip again, but this time listen for words to do with universities.
How do you know if your child does have ADHD? An EEG brain scan helps answer that, say the Swinburne researchers. Jacques Duff is a psychologist and one of Richard's PhD students. A computer program will compare Xavier's brain scan with a database of scans of ADHD sufferers.
He refers to the Swinburne researchers. Swinburne is the name of a university in Victoria. There were also some other university-related words. Jacques Duff is a psychologist and a PhD student. A great way to learn new words is in themes like this and by organising them into word trees. Let's look at university words. Students might study for a diploma, a bachelor degree, an honours degree, a master's degree, or a PhD. Jacques Duff is a PhD student, so that's where he fits into this tree. There are a number of different people and places mentioned in today's story. We don't see them all, but we hear their names. Listen for the names in this clip.
An EEG brain scan helps answer that, say the Swinburne researchers. Jacques Duff is a psychologist and one of Richard's PhD students. A computer program will compare Xavier's brain scan with a database of scans of ADHD sufferers.
The people he mentions are Jacques Duff, Richard, and Xavier. If someone has an uncommon name, people will often ask how their name is spelt. For example, Xavier is an uncommon name in Australia. So if I met Xavier, I might ask him, how do you spell your name? So it's a good idea to get used to spelling out your name. Xavier is spelt like this, X-A-V-I-E-R, Xavier. Jacques is also an uncommon name in English because it's a French name. In this case, we have both a first and a last name. His first name is Jacques, and his last name is Duff. A first name is sometimes called a Christian name. It's also called a given name. It's the name your family chooses for you. The last name is also called a surname or a family name. That's usually the name of one parent that's passed on to their children. Jacques' first name is spelt J-A-C-Q-U-E-S. D-U-E-S. And his surname is Duff. Notice that if you ask someone in Australia to spell out the name Duff, they would say D-U-F-F. But in North America, people would spell it like this, D-U-F-F. They don't use the word double. They say the letter twice instead. So if we asked Jacques Duff to spell out his surname, he would say D-U-F-F. Or he might say D-U-F-F. You'll need to be familiar with both ways of spelling out double letters. You should also make sure you know exactly how to spell out your own name in English. That's all for today. I'm Margot Politis. That's M-A-R-G-O-T-P-O-L-I-T-I-S. See you next time.